This moving on. Hola y buenos días. Buenos días. Boy, today we're going to have a lot of threads that are going to start pulling together, and it's going to feel that way. So what I want to start with, and I talked with Carla a little bit about this today, is that we're at the point now where a lot of things are converging and all starting to pull together. So if you feel a little like you got things coming at you from all directions, es normal. That's kind of normal. That's the way it goes. You know, I would love to compartmentalize things and say, oh, you know, you're only going to see things that talk about this, or you're going to only see terms that talk about that. But in reality, when we put together sentences, many different skills that look really strange because it's a foreign language, start to pull together. So here's what I'm going to tell you about that first. And this is part about, you know, if you feel this is difficult, this will be your answer as to why. In Spanish, as in, well, you know, actually a number of other languages as well. Certain concepts in terms of you listening and understanding things and trying to put together a simple sentence, certain things for the English speaker, for the person whose first language is English, are going to feel weird. You know, if your first language were French or Italian, these things would not feel weird at all. They would be like a conceptual thing you would already have. And you'd say, oh, I'll just tweak this a little bit and do it this way. But for English speakers, here are the concepts that start to cause us difficulties. And so this is going to be normal if you find this hard. One is that in Spanish, all those nouns, everything that talks about a person, place, or thing, that means a noun. All nouns have gender. And that is not hard for boy, girl, man, woman, but it is plenty weird to think that this thing here, I'm trying to get this, that this thing here, this cell phone, is a masculine, falls in masculine gender. Things, not just people, but things, items, objects, all nouns, all things have gender. That doesn't mean a cell phone is a boy. It means the word that represents that thing that is a cell phone belongs to the masculine gender. So all nouns have gender, and that means every noun, or excuse me, let me correct that, go back. Every word that talks about a noun, let's say cell phone, okay, is going to have to be like a puzzle piece that fits and matches up with it. It will have to fit the gender that thing we know as cell phone is. It will have to fit the gender that this idea of cup is. All the words that talk about the thing will have to match up in form to the gender and then the number, if you got one Z or two Z's, of all things. That is a conceptual thing for English speakers that is really tough. So get used to being uncomfortable with that a little bit. So we're going to have nouns being masculine and feminine, singular and plural. That part is not too hard. We're going to have all the describing words that describe a noun also have to look at that noun. So masculine nouns like el celular, everything that talks about the cell phone, which whether it's small or black or electronic, all those words have to match up and say, oh, I also have to be a masculine form because I'm talking about this thing. All things that talk about la taza, the cup, you know, big, gray, the color, okay, would have to look at that word taza and say, I'm going to go into a feminine form. Okay, and then look at it. Is it one or is it more than one? So that is a hump we have to get over as English speakers. And then the other big hump is this thing of verb conjugations. What you saw last week, what we practiced last week with the forms of ser. People are not used to as many verb forms. Conjugations just means the forms a verb takes on. But the thing that's tough for English speakers is that every single verb in the Spanish language is going to morph, change, shift its form a little bit. But in that case, verbs change form to tell you who is doing the action. Okay. A describing word changes form for the gender, masculine, feminine, but verbs will change form to talk about, is it yo, I, doing the action? Is it tú, you, doing the action? Is it one single person by themselves? Is it we, meaning I'm in the group? Is it they, a group? So this idea of all these different, every verb having a different conjugation is tough for English speakers. So if you feel like, wow, this is hard, normal. That is a normal feeling. Just go with it and listen to as many examples as you can. And eventually it will click. The light will come on, but be patient with yourself. Okay. Do you have any questions we need to lay out there and get out of the way before we start on a little bit of our pronunciation, some practice? Again, we're going to correct some things about gender and number, that little homework thing. We're going to correct the homework on ser, and then we're going to start to talk about some other verbs. Do you have any questions you got from anything you read, anything you think is weird, anything at all? Feel free to ask. The topics we'll be doing in class will not strictly follow the order of everything in the book. And like this week in particular, you're going to notice I'm going to ask you to look at certain pages for certain concepts. Nothing yet? Wow. Okay. Feel free to interrupt when you've got a question. All right. Let's practice a little bit of one puzzling thing, which is that pronunciation of R, the trilled R. Okay. That is a legitimately a tough thing because English doesn't have that sound, unless you're a little kid making funny sounds to be funny. And nobody does this in English. And this is why I had given you this video to watch. If you did not watch this guy's video, it is particularly good because of the way that he explains. A good way to start, he explains, first of all, that the way you make that trill, or sometimes people call it rolling your R, the way you make that happen is really that you have to let your tongue be a flag. Let your tongue be kind of limp and a flag. Some of you will find this, wow, this comes easily to you, and some will not. It helps you to be better understood. If you can't roll an R perfectly, never freak out about that, because it does take time for some people to get accustomed to it. But let your tongue be kind of a loose flag that flaps. And a lot of it has to do with airflow over that flappy tongue to let it flap behind these upper front teeth. That's what happens. And a great way to do that is to start with combinations that are FR, words that start with FR. Because words that start with FR, F forces you to get some air moving through your mouth. So what we're going to do, hopefully you watch that video. If you didn't, go back and do that. We're going to take a look at some words that have those FR starting letters first. Okay. I'm going to put this on share screen for you guys. Okay. And keep in mind for the R, single R, that trill is just, it's a shorter trill is all, you know. It's like one flap of your tongue. Like if you said, oh, I got a letter. Okay. If a single R is the first letter of a word, then it's going to sound just like this double R, the stronger trill. And that's usually the harder one for people to do. So instead of starting with these words that are on your formal list, let's go down here to these words that, like in the video, start with an F sound first, an F and an R, an F or an R. So we're going to take some words that will help you. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger so we can see them better. Here we go. Aquí vamos. Here we go. Let's take this word. This means this part of your head. Or enfrente, front too. Well, that's the front part of your face, isn't it? So here's the word frente. I want you to try this word with me. Frente. This is a single trill. Frente. 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 When you get the F, it lets you flap that tongue a little bit more easily. Frente. Frente. Okay. This word means to put on the brake. When you hit the brake pedal on your car, that's what that verb means. It's a verb. It's an action, to brake, like your car. As in stop the car, not brake, like brake the car. Okay. Hit the foot on the pedal kind of brake. Okay. Frenar. Oh, we got two R's there. Frenar. Frenar. Fre. That F will get air flowing over your tongue. Frenar. Frenar. Okay. Here's a word that can mean phrase, like it looks like it would be, or it can also mean sentence. We use this word to say sentence also. This word is frase. 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 Here is a word that we use a lot. We have an English word frigid, which comes from the same Latin base. And this is the word for cold. Okay. So we use this word a lot to talk about the weather, to talk about how we feel, if we need to bundle up, that sort of thing, to talk about drinks, whether you want your tea cold or hot. This word is frío. 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 Okay, frío. Next, we've got a verb that also starts with an FR. This means to scrub, like if you're scrubbing your pots or scrubbing the sink, or, you know, you're really putting effort into it. Okay, this is fregar. 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 Okay. After that, we've got a word that is a cognate. It means what you think it means. And I'm going to break this into two parts. Okay, because it's a long word. Okay. Frustrante. Frustrante. Frustrating. Frustrante. Frustrante. And our next word is also a cognate. It means what you might guess it to mean. It means fragrant. Okay. And again, this is going to use our stepping stone of starting with FR words for our sound. Fragrante. 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 Yeah, and actually we could break this into two parts too. Fragrante, fragrante. These are all single trills, okay? Frente, frenar, frase, frío, frear, frustrante, fragrante. And, this is not a trill that lasts for a long time. It's the little one. Okay, let's take a look at some more little ones, but things that don't start with an F, but these will have this single trill. Okay, this is a useful word up here because it means expensive, something that costs a lot of money. Caro, caro, caro. Okay, here's a word that is but, as in, wow, I would like a coffee, but I've had too much caffeine, that kind of but, not one's hind end. This word is pero, 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 pero. And you'll notice your tongue should flip once, boom, 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 right behind these front teeth, pero. Pero. Here's another word that happens, you hear a lot. Sometimes when people just want to say, oh, of course, because they're confirming what you've said to them. Or they want to confirm, oh, yes, I understand what you said. They'll say this one word, which means, of course. Claro. 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 Okay. Here's a word that you hear quite a lot. This word means raw. It is also a slang word for hungover. So in the slang sense, this word changes its meaning. Although if you are hungover, you're feeling pretty raw, aren't you? So this makes sense how it got to be a slang. Here's a word for raw when you're talking about food or fish. If you're getting something that's the raw fish things, like the sushi. So crudo, crudo. And that D will sound like a TH. Crudo, crudo, crudo. And last, for our single R, we're going to take a word that, again, is a cognate. It means what you think it might mean. It sounds like group. It means group. Gruppo, gruppo, gruppo. Gruppo. So I'm going to give you just a couple of examples of this list. We would not pronounce gruppo as gruppo. That's like putting too much zhuzh in it. Gruppo is too much R. Gruppo. It's a gruppo. Okay, not crudo. All right, too much R. Crudo. Crudo. Okay, not claro, but claro. Claro. Okay. Now, that trilled R may be tougher. You may not struggle with it. You may think it's tough. So we're going to take a look at when R is the first word, or excuse me, the first letter of the word to start the word off, in which case it'll sound like the double R, and the double R itself. Okay. The double R used to be, strictly speaking, a separate letter of the alphabet. I think they changed that about maybe 10, 20 years ago. But anyway, in any case, it is the stronger trill. And for that, you do want to try to prolong it a little bit. And this is where you want to practice words with this a little bit more. So we've got the word for car. And notice that caro, expensive, gets a little trill, but when I zhuzh that R up, when I really, really trill it a lot, it becomes a different word. So, there, it can be something where you can be misunderstood if you don't give it enough. Okay, we've got carro, carro. And this is where you really have to let the air flow over that tongue and let the tongue flap more. Carro, carro. And we moved from the single pero, a single flap, to this word, which once I give more R to that in that particular word. Again, it becomes a different word. Pero is but the word for doggy or your dog is perro. Perro. So these 4 words are for where doing a strong trill does make a difference in it being a different word. Okay, that sound can be important in words like that. Okay, carro, perro. Okay, we've got another thing which we in the Southwest like to have a lot when we're walking around a fairground or some kind of special event. They sell these in little side trucks, right? Those little cute little pastries. Churro. Churro. Churro is a super popular pastry item. It's like a little light donut thing. Yeah. Churro. Often served with chocolate. Okay. We got another word with a double R, which is a word some places, not all, some countries, some regions use for brown. Marrón. 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 And that accent mark on the O, you still pronounce it O. You just punch that last syllable harder because of the accent mark there. Marrón. Marrón. Another word that has a double R is the word for drunk. Borracho, 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 borracho. It's hard for when I go slow. Borracho. Easier when I go fast. Borracho. Borracho. Okay. And keep in mind, if you don't do this perfectly all the time, it's understandable, but when R is the first letter starting off a word, it will get a double R kind of trill also. So the word for red, which we'll see, you'll start to hear this more and more because pretty soon, I think in a couple of lessons, we're going to start talking about adjectives, and red is a descriptive word. It's an adjective. Rojo. Rojo. That one gets a strong trill. Rojo. The word for river starts with an R, so it gets a strong trill. Rio. 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 This word has a double meaning. If you're talking about food, it means delicious, yummy, tasty. Okay. If you're using this word to describe a human being who is obviously not tasty, it means rich, somebody who has lots of money. So the word is rico. 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 And next we've got for sure a survival word, because if you want to ask for, is there a restaurant around here? You need this word, and it's a cognate, so it's not a tough one to, we're missing our S. This is not a tough one to learn what it means, but we are going to break it up into some syllables. We're going to break it up there. And you're going to notice we've got the R in the middle is going to be a single flap of your tongue, just one. But the R that starts out will be a strong trill. So it's restaurante. 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 And the syllable we punch a little bit harder, where we put the most stress is that ran part, the little trill part. Restaurante, restaurante, restaurante. And since as tourists, we often ask for a particular restaurant, that's a good one to know. This is another one that gets a strong trill at the beginning, and then the middle R gets a single flap. So the word for rare or strange, if somebody wants to say, wow, that is strange, that is weird, they'll use this word. Raro. 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 Okay. So at the ere, just be patient with yourself. Go back over those words again. Kind of coach yourself through them one more time. Try them a few more. Okay. And give yourself time to get better at it, because that is a natural thing. Game? Okay? Okay, game. We're going to start next. We're going to back up. We're going to take a look at a couple of homework issues. One is going to be the plurals. So we're going to look at the plurals. I'm going to show you what the plural page looked like first. And we're going to take a look at what the answers are. And this is going to be one of these things of, we had a little lesson, and making things plural in Spanish is not terrifically hard, because there are some similarities with what you already have been doing all your life in English. There are just a few little things to tweak, and even the things to tweak aren't that big a tweak. But we're going to start to see how every word that talks about a noun, a person, place, or thing, if you make it plural, all the words that talk about that person, place, or thing have to also go into a plural form. So we're starting to look at things that are called articles. Articles is just a fancy grammar term that means indefinite articles, or an, or some, if it's plural, and definite articles, which means the. Definite articles means in English one thing, the. Okay. Indefinite articles means in English the word or sometimes we use an, and for plural we change that to some. Okay, so we're going to be changing not just the noun from singular to plural, but also using an indefinite article and then a definite article. So we see all those plural changes, okay? Un or una would be our words for masculine, un, feminine, una, masculine plural. Some will be unos, feminine plural. Some will be unas. But if we want to say the, we've got 4 words we're going to use. El will mean the, masculine, just one of them. La will be the, if it's a feminine thing you're talking about, just one of them. Los will be the masculine and plural word for the. Las will be the feminine but plural word for the. Okay, so we've got one example. We're going to go from month to months, more than one, just the noun by itself being plural, to some months to the months. Okay, so we shift our word from mes, 1 month, mes, to meses. We need to add an es. And now we get a little more sophisticated. Some months, unos meses. The months, los meses. Bien? Okay. And actually, I've got an answer key, which I will send for you. So you might want to scribble out a couple things if you had it jotted down. But you don't need to frantically write all these down, because I will send you this whole file. So here is our answer key. And we're going to skip number 1 because we've done that as our example. Año, year, año. To make that plural, it's just add an S to the end because it ends in a vowel. We just slap on an S. Años, años. Some years becomes unos años. The years becomes los años. Okay. Padre, padre, father. To say fathers. And by the way, making this plural also makes it the word parents, like mom and dad together. Yeah. Again, padre ends in a vowel, so we just slap on an S. Padres. Padres. Some parents, or it might mean some fathers, depending on the context, becomes unos padres. Unos has to also become plural, not just un padre, but unos padres. Okay. The parents or the fathers, depending on your context, is los padres. Okay. Okay. Animal, which does mean animal, does not end in a vowel, ends in an an L. The L sound. So plural becomes animales. We have to add an ES instead of just S because we've got a consonant on the end of the word. Animales. Some animals becomes unos animales. The animals becomes los animales. Okay. Hermano, and you'll notice in your text you had a lot of family words. We're going to be incorporating those into our practice today. Hermano, we ignore the H. The H is silent, so we don't pronounce it, but we do have to spell it with that. Hermano, brother. Ends in an O. All I do is slap on an S. Hermanos. And just like padres can mean mom and dad together, parents, hermanos can mean all your brothers and sisters when you make it plural, okay? So if you've got some sisters, some brothers, a bunch of them, hermanos covers, it's an umbrella thing. It covers everybody. Everybody who's a sibling. Hermanos. Some brothers or some brothers and sisters is unos hermanos. Unos hermanos. Okay? The brothers and sisters is los hermanos. Los hermanos. Okay. The word for daughter is hija. Again, we're going to ignore the H, the H. But that J does get an H sound. Hija. 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 Daughters, and it has to be only a female group to make that a feminine word. Hijas. Hijas. If we want to amplify a little, say some daughters. Unas hijas. Unas hijas. If we want to make it the daughters, it becomes las hijas. Las hijas. And again, these are examples of these words like unas and las are all words, they revolve around that word hijas, okay? They look at the noun hijas that they're talking about. So any word that talks about that noun has to go into a form that matches up with feminine or masculine, singular or plural. The word for family is a feminine word, familia. Ends in an A, ends in a vowel. We just slap on an S. Familias. Familias. Some families becomes unas familias. The families becomes las familias. Okay. And now we've got one of our really only little exception. Not a whole ton of words will do this, but some nouns end in the letter Z, seta, seta, which makes an S sound. So that word is luz, luz, light. But if I make it lights, like turn out the lights, that kind of thing, lights, I add an ES, but because that's a Z, I first change the Z into the letter C, and then I add the ES. So it becomes luces. Luces. It's a spelling change, that Z to a C. It makes the same sound, luces, right? Because CE gets the S S sound. So luces, it's a spelling change only. Some lights becomes unas luces. The lights becomes las luces. Okay. Dos más, two more. We've got a real generic word here. Persona, person. It ends in an a. It's a vowel. Person, even if you're referring to a male person, that word itself, persona, is a feminine word. Okay. Because it ends in an a vowel, we just slap on an S, personas. And if you want to say some people, you can express that as unas personas, unas personas. Unas personas. And if you want to say the people, the persons, we don't say persons very much in English, do we? It becomes las personas, las personas, las personas. That word las looks at the word persona, says, feminine, plural. I become las. And taxi. Taxi is something every traveler should know. Sometimes we need to hail a taxi. Taxi, gosh, every language, everybody uses this word. Everybody does. This was borrowed in from, I don't know, well, British English probably. Taxi, and taxi ends in an I. It's just masculine. It just is. But we make it plural by slapping on an S because it does end in a vowel. So it's taxis. Taxis. Okay, so some taxis, unos taxis. The taxi cabs, all right, becomes los taxis, los taxis. Bien. Okay. Vale. Do you have any questions on that little homeworks there or not? Sí o no? No? Fácil? Easy?
No.
Okay. Well, some of these family words come back when we do a little bit more with ser. I'm going to pull up our second homework, which is going to, we're going to dip the other foot in the water here. Had one foot in the water. Now we're going to have two. You had a second one. This is a little harder because you've got a bunch of forms here. We've got all those forms for the verb ser, to be. One of the two verbs that means to be. Ser, to be, goes into these forms. Yo soy, tú eres, él es, nosotros somos. Vosotros only used in Spain, sois, so you don't really need to use it. Latin American travelers don't use it ever at all. And ellos or ellas or ustedes, they use that verb son. That's the verb son. So I'm going to have an answer page. Again, I'll send you what the answer page is. And the only ones I wanted you to skip were like number 7. And if you tried it, good for you. Well, I thought there was a second one. Maybe not. They didn't have very many vosotros examples there because we don't really use it a lot, and we don't use it ever in Latin America. But here are the answers. So here's the key, and I will send you what the key is in your email at the end. So here's how the whole thing will sound when you piece it together. And you're going to notice that a lot of most of these either talk about identifying, because that's why we use ser, telling who somebody is, or using nationality. It's heavy on those. So we got Carmen es española. Carmen is Spanish. She's from Spain. Carmen es española. Okay. Carmen is one person, so we pair up es to say is. Julio y Hernando son argentinos. Julio y Hernando son argentinos. They are Argentine. They are from Argentina. Ser is used to use when we express nationality, where somebody is from. Here's another nationality. Somos italianos. We are Italian. Italian is nationality. Somos, if we're talking about we. Most people will drop the word nosotros completely. If you need to say it as nosotros somos, that is okay. But people will drop the nosotros notoriously almost all the time. Okay. and just use somos by itself. The only human group that somos can be paired up with is nosotros. So they say, why bother to say the nosotros? I know who you mean by just looking at the verb. Okay. Here's a question. And it asks, hey, are you guys Italians too? Ustedes, you guys. También just means also, or T as in T, two as in T-O-O. Ustedes también son italianos? Ustedes son italianos? Son is a plural form of ser. It matches up with plural, you guys. Ustedes son. Okay. And if somebody answered that question, they would be answering, and they're answering this one negatively. No, nosotros no somos italianos. We're not Italian. Somos alemanes. We are German. Somos. To answer, are you guys? We answer, we are. Okay, that question, ustedes también son italianos, gets answered with a we form. No somos italianos. Okay, if I'm talking about myself, as in this one, number 6, número 6, we've got, hola, soy Pedro. Soy Pedro. You can't say, yo soy Pedro. People will drop the yo. That's why I've got it in parentheses. Soy Pedro. 6, I told you, skip it. That's only a Spain thing. Sois Clara y Teresa. Are you two gals, Clara and Teresa? This is the plural of tú. That gets the verb sois, but you don't have to worry about it in Latin America, so we're going to glaze over that. Are you Mr. Gonzalez? If you're being very, very formal, and Mr. Gonzalez means you're not calling him by his first name, you have to use the formal you, usted. And the form of ser that pairs up with usted is es. ¿Es usted el señor González? ¿Es usted el señor González? Are you Mr. González? And notice, actually in Spanish, el señor González, the Mr. González, that's okay. That is okay. Okay. Las amigas de Miguel son peluqueras. Peluqueras means, what would we call those in English? Hairstylists, I guess, is what you would say, right? People who cut your hair. Pelo means hair. And when we put era or era on it, it means somebody who works with pelo, hair. So we would call these hairstylists. Yeah. And son is there because it's saying, it's talking about amigas. This is the hard one in this whole group of 10. Because when we're looking at this, say, who are we talking about? We're not talking about Miguel, Mike. Miguel tells whose friends they are. De Miguel means of Michael. And the way you say Mike's friends is las amigas de Miguel. We don't have an apostrophe S to show ownership in Spanish. Las amigas de Miguel means Mike's friends who happen to be lady friends, okay? And amigas is more than one human being, so we've got to pair it up with the form of ser that is son. Las amigas de Miguel son peluqueras. Okay, that's the hard one in the whole group. And then with tú, we can only combine one verb form there. For ser, it becomes eres. ¿De dónde eres? ¿De dónde? From where? We say, where are you from? In Spanish, you phrase that as from where are you? ¿De dónde? ¿De dónde eres? ¿De dónde eres? And people will drop the tú all the time. They'll drop the word tú. Okay. Bueno. ¿Alguna pregunta? Any question about those? Anything that didn't make sense, matching it up? Nada. Okay. Let's take a look again at, we're going to now combine two things. We're going to combine forms of, actually, we're really combining three things. We're going to combine some family vocabulary. You had a whole lot of family vocabulary. We're going to narrow it down to like immediate family. En la página 58, on 58. Well, actually 56 too, 56. Page 56 through about 58. They gave you a whole lot of terms, terminology, vocab for family members. And in the book, they go a little more. They get out into nephew and niece and in-laws. We're going to keep it more to immediate family right now for this lesson today. Immediate family meaning parents, grandparents, children, aunts and uncles, sisters, maybe cousins, a little bit of that. Okay. But we're going to combine family vocabulary. So there's item number one. We're going to combine it with forms of ser. Okay. And we're going to combine it with yet another verb, which is just I. And whereas ser becomes soy, eres, es, somos, son, to talk about a bunch of people, I always stays I. It just says there is or there are. So we're going to see how these match up, and we're going to talk about families with this slide set. And I'll send this whole thing to you, so you don't need to copy a lot of notes. Just kind of focus on it and listen to how we talk about family members. Okay. So if we want to just say there are a certain number of people in a family, we'll use I. But if we're going to talk about a specific person, it might be es to talk about one person. It might be son to talk about more than one person. Okay. And we're going to throw in this cuantos or cuantas word. This means how many. We've got that word quantity in English, which talks about how many. And how we ask that in a question is the word cuantos, or the feminine form cuantas. Okay. So let's warm up with a few things here. Vocabulario aquí. Sí. Aquí hay una abuela. There's a grandma. Hay una abuela. There's a grandma. Hay un padre. There's a dad. Hay un padre. Hay dos hijos. There are two kids. Hay dos hijos. Dos hijos. La hija. El hijo. En la familia. Aquí hay la madre. Hay una madre. Hay una madre. There's a mom, right? Y hay un abuelo, and there's a grandpa. Okay. If we put this term together in plural, los abuelos, it means grandma and grandpa together, grandparents. Los abuelos. Los abuelos. Okay. If we put if we want to talk about mom and dad together and mean parents, it becomes los padres. Los padres. And if we want to talk about all the children, no matter what their gender, it goes into the masculine plural form. This is just what happens with all family members when we talk about them. Los hijos. Los hijos. Okay. It means children. It might mean only sons if there are only sons in the family, but it's likely to mean sons and daughters, all of them together. Los hijos. Los hijos. A lot, not 100%, a lot of family words in Spanish just go with that word ends in o. It's a masculine family member. Flip that o at the end of the word to an a, it becomes the female family member. It's not 100% when you get into the in-laws and stuff. That changes a little bit, or it can change. Here we go. Ok. Es una familia grande. Aquí, es una familia pequeña. It's a small family. See? Aquí there is, I'm just saying they're out there. Hay una familia grande. Hay una familia grande. ¿Sí? Él es el abuelo. Ella es la abuela. He's the grandpa. She's the grandma. Él es el abuelo. Ella es la abuela. Bien. Son los hijos, ¿sí? Un hijo, ¿sí? Pero son los padres. These are the parents of these kids. Son los padres. Son los padres aquí. Son los hijos. El hijo, la hija. If we talk about these, their relationship to each other as kids, they become los hermanos, brothers and sisters. This is a brother and sister combo here, these two. El hermano, y la hermana. Bien? If we look at these people who don't have kids, but one of these is a brother, okay? El hermano del padre, the brother of your dad, es el tío. Es el tío. I'm going to try and make this even a little bit bigger. Sí, bien. Es el tío. Es el tío. He would be tío, an uncle to these kids. Es el tío. Ella es la tía de los chicos. Okay, es la tía. She would be the aunt. Okay. And we want to include the furry people in our lives because they are important. Las mascotas. Mascotas means pets. Okay, pets in general. Any kind of pet you might have, whether it's got wings or feet. Furry. Okay. Aquí son perros. Los perros. These happen to be dogs. Okay. And if you want to get really far away, great grandma would be bisabuela. Great grandpa would be bisabuelo. Bis at the beginning makes it a great. Oop. Yeah, I can type. Great grandpa. Okay. Bisabuelo, bisabuela. Sometimes we don't get down the chain that far. Okay. So if I were to talk about this whole family, I'm going to take out my I have. I would say, en la familia, in the family. En la familia, hay un abuelo, hay una abuela, hay dos hijos, ¿sí? Este hijo es el padre. Hay 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Let's count them all up. There are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hay 8 personas. Hay 8 personas en la familia. Hay 8 personas. There are 8 people. Hay 3 mascotas. There are 3 pets. Hay 3 perros. There are 3 dogs. Okay. Bien. Vale. Okay. Let's go to some famous people we know. We could ask, ¿cuántas personas? How many people? And notice how that how many word has to be a feminine plural because it's talking about personas. ¿Cuántas personas hay? How many people are there? ¿Cuántas personas hay En la familia Obama, hay cuatro. Hay cuatro personas. Next week, you're going to work a little more on numbers. Hay cuatro personas. En la familia hay cuatro, ¿sí? Hay dos hijas. Hay dos hijas. There are two daughters, and they're only girl daughters. So hay dos hijas, right? I can't use the hijos there. Hijas. I might break that down, and instead of using I might tell who they are with their name. And if I tell who they are with their name, now I've got to use ser, because ser identifies, and I'll change ser into its forms. So, hay cuatro personas en la familia. I could now identify them with their names. Malia y Sasha son las hijas. They are the daughters. And now that I'm pegging a name on, I've got to use a form of ser. Son las hijas. Michelle es la madre. I'm using her name to identify and then who she is in the family. Michelle es la madre. I could also use this family word, esposa, wife. We have the word spouse in English, pretty closely related. Michelle es la esposa. So esposa identifies who Michelle is. Madre identifies who Michelle is. I use es then. Michelle es la madre. Michelle es la esposa. Barack es el padre. Barack es el esposo. He's the father. He's the husband. And notice for a lot, not 100%, but a lot of family words, esposo, that O ending tells you male, therefore the husband, and esposa tells you feminine, wife. The A at the end tells you wife, okay? A lot of family words will do that. They'll just flip to an O at the end for the male, an A to the end for the female, okay? And identifies who. Let's take a look at a different family. I could ask, ¿cuántas personas hay? Are there? They just exist. ¿Cuántas personas hay en la familia Bush? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7. Hay 7 personas en la familia Bush. Hay 7 personas en la foto. Okay. And I could get, did I write it out here? I did. Okay. Hay 7 personas en la familia Bush. Hay 7 personas, okay? I could then say, I'm not going to use I'm going to identify who they are. Laura es la esposa y Laura es la madre, right? George es el padre. George es abuelo. George es el esposo y George es el padre. George es el padre de Jenna y Bárbara. George es el padre de Jenna y Bárbara. Ok. Bárbara es la hija. Bárbara es la hija. Jenna también es la hija. Y Jenna tiene un esposo. ¿Sí? Él es el esposo de Jenna. No sé el nombre del esposo de Jenna. I don't know his name. No sé el nombre. No sé el nombre del esposo de Jenna. ¿Ok? Pero, ok, hay 2 hijas de Jenna y su esposo. Hay 2 hijas. Bien. Okay. The word for grandfather, el abuelo. The word for grandma, abuela. If we want to talk about grandkids, now we've got an extra little word in here. It becomes el nieto, grandson. And we're going to just flip that nieto at the end to an a to make it a granddaughter word. La nieta, granddaughter. Okay. George, para George y Laura hay dos nietas. Y un perro. And a dog. Okay. A ver. Let's flip to a different family. Sí. La familia Beckham. Here is a famous football player. Futbolista. Okay. ¿Cuántas personas hay en la familia Beckham? We got the former Spice Girl gal. I'm not sure which Spice Girl she was. Okay, we got the ex-Spice Girl. We got the ex-footballer. Okay. ¿Cuántas personas hay? How many people are there? Hay en la familia Beckham. Hay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hay 5 personas en la familia Beckham. Sí. David es el esposo de Victoria. David es el padre de los chicos, es el padre, ¿sí? Victoria es la esposa de David Beckham. Victoria es la esposa, she's the wife. Victoria también es la madre de 3 chicos. Ella es la madre. I'm identifying what role she has in the family. Es la madre. Okay. Brooklyn, Romeo y Harper son los hijos de David y Victoria Beckham. Son los hijos Beckham. They're the Beckham boys, the Beckham kids. Son los hijos. Bien? Bueno. Okay. A ver. So we use ser to identify who people are, whether it's by their job, by who they are as a family member. We use ser to talk about where people are from. We tend to use ser more with things that are permanent or very, very, very hard to change. Okay? Ser has a special job. One thing I want to kind of point out to you in the book so that you can think about it, because gives you lots of examples. En la página 69, and I would say the next 3 or 4 pages up, they talk a lot about professions, and we use ser with professions to tell what jobs people have. So I want you to maybe focus on that a little this week, but I'm going to point a few things out. And actually, I think I'm going to add a page to our familia page to kind of just show you with ser what that does. So I'm going to do a little add-on here, and then I'll put it on screen. Oh, okay. We use ser with professions to talk about jobs. Okay, let's put this back on screen here. I'm going to add this on to the La Familia slide, which I'll send you the whole thing in the email. We use ser with professions to talk about jobs, but I want you to notice that in your book on these pages 69 through, wow, how far does this go? Oh, it goes away ways through 72, 74. Let's just say through 73, 69 through 73. And we're going to learn those numbers next week. You see lots of examples of vocabulary for professions, jobs. Okay. And I want you to just notice a few things about that, because these are common things that will be kind of a signal, a flag when people use them. There are certain suffixes, and suffixes just mean it's a word ending. Yeah. There are certain suffixes, there are word endings that start to flag. This is a job. Okay. We do that in English too. You don't think about it consciously because why? You've been using it all your life. But okay, por ejemplo, a lot of suffixes like ente or ante indicate somebody who does a job, like gerente, manager. Oop, not manager. Okay. Like cantante, a singer. And when you hear these ante things, they usually tell you somebody who does a certain kind of work, right? Asistente would be another one. Asistente. Assistant. Okay. Bien. Oh, aunt. See, I'm misspelling in English because that's a hard one to get right in English. Another suffix you may hear a lot is ista. And this one has a close relative in English, ist, like artist, yeah, pianist, yeah. So, yeah, you get anything that ends in ista tells you, ooh, somebody who does this particular kind of job, like artista, like dentista, right? Artista. Okay. Especially in the sports world, this becomes a thing. Futbolista means somebody who plays soccer. Yeah. I think in British English, they'll call that a footballer. Yeah, they call them that? I think they do. Futbolista, right? Sí, bien. But especialista. Yeah, we've got a word like that in English, specialist, but it becomes especialista. Okay, so ista is always going to be a signal that tells you, oh, somebody who does something for a living, right? And another kind of related one is either a TOR or it might be show up as DOR. Or it might even show up as ERO. All of these things, and I will highlight these so that you know these are what we call suffixes. They're little endings we tag onto the ends of words. They tend to tell you that somebody does a certain kind of work or a certain kind of job or has a certain kind of role. So some of those these TOR and DOR words, and I'm just checking at the ones they give you in your book because they're a good list. This comes on 71. Actor, TOR, actor, right? Contador, somebody who counts. Well, that's an accountant. Contador, an accountant. Yeah. Director can mean a director. It can also mean a principal in a school. Escritor, writer, somebody who writes for a living. Profesor, somebody who's a professor or teacher, right? And some DOR words like trabajador, worker. That's just a very general word. Somebody who does work. Trabajar means to work. So when we slap a dor on the end of that trabajar idea, it becomes trabajador, a worker, or limpiador, somebody who does cleaning. The first part of that word means cleaning, yeah? Investigador, investigator. Vendedor, somebody who sells. Vender means to sell. When we slap a dor on the end of it, it becomes vendedor. And lots of ero words like camarero or mesero, somebody who waits on tables, okay? Consejero, enfermero or enfermera, nurse, people who are nurses in hospitals or doctor's office, enfermero, enfermera, ingeniero, engineer, those ero words. All these kinds of suffixes are going to be words that tell what somebody does for a job. And we use ser with these quite a lot. Okay. So I'll fill some examples in there and make sure that gets sent out to you. So that's where your book starts to fill in a lot of vocabulary. Those are all words you might use with ser. Okay. Now, we're going to venture into, we're going to venture into our next to be word, because now this is going to start to uncomfortably mix. We've got another verb. Oh, do I identify here? No, I didn't yet. Estar. Estar also means to be. Why do they have two words for to be? Well, it doesn't really matter why. It matters when you use them. Okay. Estar can also mean to be, but we use it in different situations, and that's what you want to know. So number one thing you want to know is that there are two verbs that mean to be. Am, is, are. And like ser gets many conjugations, this verb estar gets many conjugations. We use this verb estar to talk about how people feel emotionally or in your health, and to talk about location. For how you feel or where you are, always use the verb estar. It's a dumb rhyme, but we use estar to talk about health, feelings, location. Estar, unlike ser, which is indicates more permanence, estar talks about things that are easily changed. So when we taught you in the first session how to ask, how are you? It was, ¿cómo estás? Right? The very basic form of how are you? ¿Cómo está usted? For formal, or ¿cómo estás? For familiar. How are you? How you feel changes from day to day, possibly from hour to hour. So when we talk about how we feel emotionally or how we feel health-wise, we use estar. And when we talk about things that are easily changeable, like feeling happy, feeling sad, we use estar. So now we need to know not just the forms of ser, but also we're going to take a look at the forms of estar. And here are the forms of estar. Again, sí.
What about siento? Wouldn't that be with feeling?
Siento is yet a different verb, but it means I feel.
All right.
Me siento. So you can use that more specialized verb, and it's usually as me siento. Me siento feliz. I feel happy. But then it means I feel, not I am. Does it convey the same idea? It might for emotions. Yeah. So that's when you might hear that. Does that answer your question, Dorothy? See? Bien. Okay. But here's a more basic verb. Estar is a more basic level verb than me siento. Me siento. Okay. So we're going to take a look at the forms of estar and what it might mean. We're going to use a little video to show examples. But first, I want you to know the forms and what they match up with. Who in those personal pronouns they match up with. If I want to talk about myself, yo, I need to use this form, estoy. Like you had soy for ser, I've got estoy for yo. Okay? To talk to you, to address somebody as you in the friendly way, we change that to estás. It gets an S at the end, like eres got an S at the end. Estás. So the question you have is, ¿Cómo estás? How are you? ¿Cómo estás? That's why it's estás. Estás matches up with tú. People will skip the word tú. People will skip the word yo. There's only one human being estoy can match up with, so they don't bother with that word yo. There's only one human being that estás can be used to talk to, so they skip the word tú in most cases. Okay. If I'm talking about one person and only one person, if I'm talking about a guy and we could sub in the word he, él. If I'm talking about a gal and we could sub in the word she, ella. If I'm talking to you formally, usted, those three pronouns will use this form of estar, está. Just the a sound hanging off the end, and it gets a punch. Está. We punch the a sound at the end. Está. Okay? Estoy, one person, but it's yo. Estás, one person, but it's you, buddy, you. Está, to talk formally, you, or one human being. Talk about one human being. Está. Está. Okay? If I look at the plural side, which is the other side of that chart, okay? The plural side, if I put myself in a group, if I bring other people in with me, it becomes that idea of nosotros, we. And people will skip the word nosotros, but here's the verb that they'll use for estar to talk about the we, nosotros group. Estamos. Estamos. So, mos. Okay? In Spain, you need to know this, but you won't need to know it talking to anybody in Latin America. Vosotros, the plural of tú, uses estáis. Okay? So we're just going to, that's what it is, estáis, but you won't hear it from a Latin American ever. If I make él more than one, if I make him into ellos, if I make ella more than one, I turn it into ellas. If I make usted, you, formal, into any plural you group, be it buddies or people you don't know from Adam, ustedes, all those three, ellos and ellas and ustedes, they'll use this form of estar, están. Están. So I want you to notice the third person, you're talking about a plural group, third person plural gets an N at the end, like you, son got an N at the end. The buddy, you, tú, got an S at the end. Estás, eres, had an S at the end. And as somos had a mos at the end, this gets a mos at the end. This always signals a we thing, right? Estamos. Okay? So we're going to use all these forms. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. It tells who we're talking about. It says nothing about feminine, masculine. It talks about who is a certain way, okay? And we use estar to talk about health, emotions, feelings, things that might change, can be fleeting, not permanent necessarily. And we use it to talk about location also. So you're going to see examples of that very, very shortly. First off, let's take a jumbled group and see if we can match them to the human being. We're going to match them to padre. We're going to match them to tú. We're going to match it to mis amigos. We're going to match it to mi madre y yo, my mom and I. I'm making yo more than one. We're going to match it to ustedes, and we're going to match it to usted, and we're going to match it to yo. So we're going to figure out which verb here on the right matches up with this human being. If I'm talking about mi padre, which form of estar would I need from this group here to match up with mi padre?
Está.
Está. We've got to pick a onesie kind of word. Ooh, I didn't quite get that. We got to pick a onesie form where I'm only talking about one person. Mi padre está. Mi padre está. Mi padre está. If I want to talk to you, tú, personally, and I consider you a friend, which one of these verbs is going to match up with that idea of tú, you, are?
Estás.
Estás. It's going to need an S at the end. Tú estás. Tú estás. If I'm talking about my friends, my friends are in my house. My friends are location. My friends are happy. My friends are sad. I'm going to need to use which one of these verb forms? Mis amigos. More.
Están.
Están. I need a n. An N at the end. Están, están. If I'm talking about mi madre y yo, I'm adding not just yo, but mi madre y yo. I need which one of these leftover verbs?
Estamos.
Estamos. It cannot be just estoy because I've got somebody with yo. Mi madre y yo is the same thing as saying nosotros, right? Yo, and I add anybody to it, it becomes the nosotros form. Mi madre y yo estamos. Mi madre y yo estamos. Ustedes, I want to talk to all of you, more than one of you in a group. It's going to be one of these three.
Están.
Están. I need a n at the end of it. Ustedes están. If you walk up to a group of three people and you say, how are you guys? It's ¿cómo están? ¿Cómo están? Right? ¿Cómo están? If I talk to one you, but it's a formal level, I don't call this person by their first name.
Está.
Está. Okay. Usted shares the same form as talking about any one person. Está. And so now I'm left over with the yo form. Estoy. That's all I've got. Estoy. Bien. Okay. Bien. I'm going to show you some examples. I'll send you a video to watch for homework. But we're going to go through this. I'm watching my time here. So let's see how I might use both a form of ser or a form of estar to talk about these people in these contexts. If I want to just identify who these people are, I might say, ella es paciente. She's a patient. Ella es doctora, or ella es médica. Because I'm telling what their roles are, what their relationships are, right? Who they are. Ella es paciente. Ella es doctora o médica.
So you don't need an article for that one, for those?
No. With relationships or jobs, yeah, they won't say una paciente. They will say, okay, what if I want to say she's an old patient, meaning she's been with this doctor for ages, yeah? Ella es una vieja paciente. She's an old patient, not a new one. Then I might inject the una. Es una vieja. She's an old. Una vieja paciente. Yeah. But if I just use the word paciente by itself, no article. I know. With ser, that happens. Not with other verbs, but it happens with ser. Okay. If you make a whoops and you say, ella es una paciente, somebody understands what you mean. It's a no big deal mistake. They'll still understand it. It'll sound a little funny to them, but okay. What we're going to look at now is why I would use estar instead of ser. I can say, ella es doctora, ella es médica, I'm identifying her, but la médica está contenta. She is happy, or just, she's well today. La médica está bien. She's fine. She feels fine, right? And I might, because happy or well talks about a changeable condition, I need to flip to that other verb. Okay, estar. If I want to say, instead of saying she's a patient, I want to say, oh, the patient is sick. Sick is how she feels. I need to use estar. La paciente está enferma. Now, in English, there's no difference. This is hard. This is hard. We don't do this in English. She is a patient. She is sick. Is, blanket. In Spanish, it's not a blanket. They've got the one verb, es paciente. I identify her, but I use a different verb to talk about how she feels. La paciente está enferma. She's ill. And notice that word enferma, ill, is talking about a lady, so it has to become enferma with an a at the end, a feminine ending at the end. La paciente está enferma. La médica está bien. She's well. La paciente está enferma. I could even say location está en la oficina. Location, she's in the office. Estar talks about where somebody is. It talks about how they feel or their emotions. Bien? Let's see another example. Otro ejemplo. This one is slightly lame, but bear with me. Ellos son presidentes. I need a form of ser. Presidents identify who those guys were, right? Son presidentes. Can't change that they were presidents. That's professions is a permanent thing. But if I want to say they are in history books, I know it's kind of a figurative location, but ellos están en los libros de historia. Let's get a little more concrete. Instead of saying están en los libros de historia, let's say, to make it more concrete, even though they're not all there now, but están en la Casa Blanca. They're in the White House. That's where a president is, yeah? Están en la Casa Blanca. They're in the White House. I know some of them are long dead, but yeah. Okay. Bien. Location, estar. Yeah, that's kind of location, even though it's figurative. Bueno, okay. Soy maestra. I'm telling what I do. Soy maestra. Mis estudiantes y yo, if I make it a we idea, mis estudiantes y yo somos amigos. We are friends. Amigos, again, is an identifier, right? But if I add some different information with a different idea, I might talk about my location. Estoy en Arizona. Estoy en Arizona. En Arizona is location. I can't use ser. I can't say soy en Arizona. It's got to be estoy en Arizona. And similarly, if I want to say we are in a Zoom class, even though it's virtual, that's a location. Estamos, we are all, mis estudiantes y yo, estamos en la clase de Zoom. Estamos en la clase de Zoom. Location can be a small place, clase de Zoom. It can be a state. It could be a city. It could be a country. But location, en location, we need estar. Estoy en Arizona. Estamos en la clase de Zoom. Bien? Good so far? See? Bien. Okay, let's take a look at some other examples. We'll make some of these a little bit smaller so you can read it all. If I want to talk about this guy. Wow. Make it smaller, make it smaller. Okay. If I want to talk about this guy, I might say, Ed Sheeran es pelirrojo. He's a redhead. He was born with that hair color. That's permanent. Es pelirrojo. I got to use ser. Es inglés. He's English, or is he Irish? I don't really know. I'm going to call him English. Es inglés. His nationality is not going to change. Where he's from is always where he's going to be from. Es inglés. It doesn't tell where he is right now, but where he's from. That needs that permanent verb ser. So, es pelirrojo. He's a redhead. Never going to change. It kind of identifies physically what he's like. Es inglés, where he's from. But I might say he's at a concert. And now that's a location. So he is he is in a place. Él está en un concierto. Okay. Está en Los Ángeles. He's in Los Angeles. If I want to flip over and say how he feels after his concert, está cansado. He's tired. How tired is how he feels. Feelings, how you feel and where you are, always use the verb estar. We use a different verb for that. Okay? And similarly, if I talked about a couple of people, I might say Beyonce y Jay-Z son estadounidenses or son norteamericanos. They are U.S. people. They're Americans, yeah? Where they're from, nationality, ser. Son estadounidenses. Son norteamericanos. But if I want to say where they are right now, that's location. Están en Los Ángeles. Están en Los Ángeles. ¿Sí? Bien? I'm going to send you for homework a little video that's just going to talk about estar. So you're going to see those forms over and over. It's going to be heavier on the estoy and the estamos forms. It's heavier on the first person, yo, one person, and nosotros, the we form. But it'll show you examples of location and health and feeling words. So it's a great video to show you both forms of estar and situations in which we use estar. Bien? This is kind of a tough thing for English speakers, and it'll take a bit more practice, but I'm going to send you these slides so you can see examples and kind of get a feel for that new verb estar and how that works, why it is different. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You have to learn both a different verb, not ser, but different verb forms for a new verb, estar, and why, in what context, in what situation we use them. Okay. Bien. Make sense? See? It may not make sense, but you got the kernel idea. Yeah. For it to be comfortable, that will take a little bit longer, for sure. Okay. What I would like you to do for the coming week is in your book to preview chapters 7 and 8. It's going to have a lot of descriptions in 7 and 8. Another thing I want you to focus on is I'm going to give you some specific page numbers. I want you to focus a lot on numbers. We're going to go through numbers 1 through 30. Heavier duty. And I'll also show you the page numbers where they talk about some higher numbers. But we're going to get hit real hard, the 1 through 30 numbers next week. And I'll give you some videos to watch to get you used to the idea of numbers. And we're going to start to blend in. You're going to start to hear I with numbers, and just getting over that hump of knowing the vocabulary for numbers is actually it is a really essential survival skill to know numbers. So you can talk about prices and how many items you want to buy from people and all of that sort of thing. Bien. Okay? Bien? Good for the week? Okay. Background things to read so you know some descriptions and start to get familiar with numbers. We're going to practice a lot next week all together with numbers because that takes practice together. And if you don't do that, it'll feel really like kind of overwhelming. So we're going to take them in the 1 through 30 chunk next week. Pretty heavy duty. Bien?
Bien.
Okay. Magnifico. Gracias. Any questions you have through the week, feel free to email me. And eso es todo. That's it for today. Okay. ¿Vale?
Gracias.
Okay. De nada. Nos vemos. We'll see you guys later next week, la semana que viene. Hasta luego.